So thank you for signing up for our third gathering of Forest Talk, where we talk story about the animals and plants and all the cool things we find in our native Ohia forests. And today we're super excited to welcome Dr. Julia Diegmann as our guest. Julia will share about Kauai's rare and remarkable forest birds. My name is Kim Rogers. I'm an outreach specialist at Kauai Invasive Species Committee. My focus is Ohia and protecting our native forest ecosystems from rapid Ohia death and other forest invasives. Before we invite Julia to the spotlight, though, I have a few requests and announcements. If you're not speaking or on sharing, asking a question or something like that, please mute yourself. And if you haven't already, as we've been doing, drop in the chat where you're joining us from. And we are recording this, just so you know. We'll be sending the recording out by the end of the week. So if you have to leave early or you miss a portion you want to see again, you'll be getting an email with that link to the YouTube page where we're going to be uploading it. Hi, Molly from Monahola, down the road from me. Great to see you. And I do have two upcoming items for your calendars. You might want to join us. We have a few spots, not many left. From what you learned today about our forest birds, Julia and I will be hosting a forest journaling combo bird walk event on Friday, May 16th. And I'll drop the registration link in the chat when I finish chatting here in a minute. Again, Friday, May 16th, we're going to be doing a forest journaling / bird walk where hopefully you'll see one or two or more of our native forest birds that we're going to talk about today. And then on Wednesday, May 21st, I'm going to be at Keoki's Paradise in Poipu, leading an intro to nature journaling workshop. So those are two events for you going forward. Julia might have events to share as well, but she can do that when she gets to her talk. For now, let's talk birds. Dr. Julia Diegmann has been working with Kaua'i Forest Bird Recovery Project since 2011. She founded Diegmann Science Services in spring of 2013. She obtained her PhD in genetics from the, and I'm not even going to try to say this, but I'm sure she will for us, in Germany, University in Germany. And her expertise includes project conceptualization and design, grant writing, data validation and visualization, and study design. More recently, Julia has been focusing on outreach, communication, and community engagement. She is passionate about Kauai's native forest birds and building a community of support around forest conservation. Welcome, Julia. Will you correct my poor attempt at the university where you got your PhD?
It's totally fine. I got it from the university in Jena. So I'm just that's all you guys need to know.
Germany. And that also
Yeah.
explains the accent for those of you who are not familiar with Julia. So, welcome, Julia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. That was like a very formal introduction. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. And I just wanted to say thank you to Kim because we have been collaborating and partnering together for quite a while now. And, I really enjoy working with her and doing all these things. And of course, thank you all for being here right now and wanting to learn more about our beautiful forest birds because they need all the love they can get. And I'm going to start sharing my screen and we'll get started in just a second. Okay, let me know how this looks. All good? Okay.
You're up and running, all good.
Up and running and all good. All right.
Okay.
Okay, then let's get to it. So, our forest birds, they are incredibly rare and incredibly remarkable. And today, what I would like to do is I would like to share a little bit with you about why they're so remarkable. And I would also like to, for you guys to meet them, meet the species that we still have left. So I will start this talk with sharing about why we have such a high biodiversity here in Hawaii. Hawaii is a biodiversity hotspot. We have many, many species that are only found here. And I'm just going to share briefly why that is. Then we are going to meet some of the species. We have eight remaining, or seven and a half. And why that is, I will share later with you. And I also am going to give you a brief overview of the threats that these birds are facing. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can help with these beautiful birds and helping to save them. So this beautiful picture, Kalala Valley on Kauai, you see the ohia in the forefront, some beautiful oluhe ferns. And I put this quote there from Peter Vitusek. It says, Hawaii is the greatest place on earth to be a biologist. And I actually fully agree with this statement. And I hope that after I talked now and shared all this information with you, you will agree with me too. So let's zoom out and kind of look at where we are right now, or where you are right now. Most of us are here in Hawaii. So we are in this little rectangle right here. We are actually about 4,000 miles from Japan, 2,500 miles from the mainland. We are, in fact, on one of the most isolated island chain in the world. And so isolation is a really, really important factor for biodiversity because it allows for the evolution of unique species and the development of unique features in species. So now I told you we are so isolated. How did life get here to the Hawaiian Islands right before humans? So when we look at that, the answer to that is the three big W's. Species got here by wind, wings, and water. Obviously, birds could fly here, right? But they also brought little insects in their feathers. Insects were blown here by the wind. And then also species arrived here in the waves, like, maybe bigger seeds. Or sometimes I heard that during big tsunami events, chunks of land would wash ashore. Because when you think about it, if you wanted to start a population, you cannot do that with just one individual. You at least need two of the same species, unless you're a snail. And then on those big chunks of land, you would have several individuals of a species. But these events did not happen very often, maybe every 50 or 80,000 years. So it wasn't something that happened very often. Looking at that, you need to think about what couldn't get here, because this is also very, very important when it comes to our biodiversity here. So big land predators, right? No big mammals arrived here, no bears, no foxes, no alligators, right? We do have avian predators. We have the Hawaiian hawk, Io, and the Hawaiian owl, Pueo, but no big land predators. And of course, we have all the good marine life, sharks and that stuff. But on land, we do not have a lot of predators, which means that our native species evolved in the absence of predators, and that's really important, important fact to remember. Looking at some features, geographic features of our islands. So our islands are quite old. We are on Kauai. We have 5.1 million years of age. And then, I mean, of course, when you go towards the Big Island, we have an active volcano that's, currently erupting beautifully. But all the islands are pretty old. So a lot of evolution could happen during that time. When you look at weather conditions, the wind always hits the islands from the north shore, right? So that creates something called the lee effect. The north side of all the islands are wet and rainy. West side is dry, right? And we all know that here on Kauai, you drive to Waimea and it gets desert-like, and then you drive up to Waimea Canyon and, you have like really dry conditions. But then, suddenly on the other side, North Shore, there's like lush tropical foliage and waterfalls and all that good stuff. So this is called the lee effect. So taking all these things together that I talked about now, the islands have a dry side and a wet side. We are very isolated, and some of the islands are very old. That led to many different habitat types, right? Here on Kauai, we have 10 different habitat types. We have everything from lowland dry to alpine. And that translates into many different niches where species can evolve. And why is that? So that is when a species gets here, like in this case, It's a rosy finch, actually from somewhere in Europe, got here millions of years ago, and then evolved into many, many different species into the family of the Hawaiian honeycreepers. And this is called, fancy word, adaptive radiation. It just means one species evolves into many, many different species. And as you can see here, we have many, many different beak types, beak shapes. There are insect eaters, there's pollinators, there are seed eaters. So many, many different bird species evolved that are adapted to specific landscapes and habitats. This not only happened to birds, right? Because we asked the question, why do we have such a high biodiversity here? So this not only happened in birds, it also happened in many, many other species, insects, plants, everywhere on all the islands, right? Every single island that happened, adaptive radiation. And that translates into many, many different species that are unique, sometimes for a specific island. Sometimes these species are only found in specific regions of that island, right? So something really incredible. Another thing happened, which is called coevolution, right? In the example of our birds here, I have a photo of the Kaua'i amakihi sitting on a native lobelia. You can see the beak shape is like exactly the shape of the flower, right? Um, Sometimes it was the case that one bird species would pollinate one plant species, right? This is how specialized the ecosystem here was. And as you can imagine, this is like a super vulnerable system, especially when you bring something in that's foreign. So with the arrival of humans, first the Polynesians and then later the Europeans, foreign species were brought in here. Plants, animals, also diseases that had a huge impact on the composition of our ecosystem here. It had a huge impact on our bird species, a huge impact on plants. Many of the plants that you see when you drive around here right now, down here, I live in Kalaheo, almost nothing here is native, right? All of the species that I see around my house when I'm driving here, they're not native. If you want to see native forest, you have to go up to the Alakai Swamp in Kokee. And there you will have the native species. So even though we have less than 0.2% of the land area of the United States, we hold over 30% of the federally listed species. And we have been called the extinction capital of the world. And at this point, I wanted to share with you just some of the species from Kauai that we have lost in recent years. It's a little sad slide. So we have the O'u, Nukupu'u, Kama'o, Akialoa, and I think the most famous extinct bird of Kauai is the Kauai o'o. I just like to show this because I think I was reading this article in the New York Times where, you kind of like, you get used to the new normal, which is for us, the normal is that we don't have these birds around. But, 50 years ago, it was totally normal to have these birds around and people, wouldn't, they wouldn't think anything of it. And so we kind of have gotten used to, not having them around. And I think that's something that, we need to kind of, we need to work against so that we kind of remember these species that were incredibly important, not only to the environment here, to the ecosystem, but also to the culture. And I think it's really important that we kind of, remember them. The kama'o here on this right side of the screen, it's actually called the large Kauai thrush, and it's like little brother. The small Kauai thrush is still around. That's the puaiohi. It's a Kauai endemic species and critically endangered, and I will talk a little bit about that later. The Kauai o'o, I said it's the most famous extinct bird, I think, of Kauai, last seen in 1985. I say 87 here because it was somebody heard the song of the Kaua'i O'o in 1987. And it is kind of famous because somebody recorded that last song of the Kaua'i O'o and put it on the internet on YouTube. If you Google last song of the Kaua'i O'o, you get, a beautiful recording of the song. It's kind of haunting, and it's a really beautiful song, and it has inspired many artists to actually make uh, classical music pieces, and they've written books about it and children's books, and there's like animation. So, if you have a chance, Google it and check it out. So I think by now I probably have a little bit uh, depressed you, maybe, talking about all these things. And I apologize for that. But I think for me, it's really important to kind of set the stage to, where we are going next, which is kind of like, why should we care about this? Why should we care that we are losing these birds? Why is it important? And to me, it is important to care about this because we still have some of the original biodiversity left, right? We still have some of these species around, and we can still do something to protect them. And I think people also need to really realize how important these birds are for our ecosystem here and for the culture here. These birds are pollinators, they are seed eaters, they are insect eaters, and they keep the forest going. Our native forest cannot function without these birds. And that brings me to kind of like my next question, how many more species can we lose before like this fragile house of cards will collapse, right? How many more species can we removed before the ecosystem is not functional anymore? And it's not only the birds, right? Because you also see insects and butterflies and snails on my little house of cards here. They are equally important and equally uh, deserve to be protected. So to me, it's really, we need to protect the forest as a baseline. So with that, I'm going to go and introduce you to our 8 remaining forest bird species. And so that's the happier part of the talk. So we have 8 left, 7.5, and I will talk about that, why I say that in a little bit. And so what I thought is, I think many of you are here on Kauai or from Kauai, and you all know Ron Wiley, and he does this little radio show where he has a question. He calls it, "Do you know or do you care?" And so I have kind of like I have like 4 or 5 facts for you. Do you know, do you care, that you can actually use and take home tonight and start a conversation with your friends or your family at the dinner table, and just use these as conversation starters to talk about birds. So the first one is, did you know that we have 8 forest bird species left on Kauai? And here are pictures of all of them. So we have the beautiful Iiwi over here, the Puayohi, the Akeke. Don't confuse this with the Akekeke, which is the ruddy turnstone and a shorebird. So this is the Akeke. We have the Anianiao. Over here, we have the Kaua'i Amakihi, we have the Kaua'i Elepayo, Apapane, and Akikiki. So next one is, did you know that 6 of the 8 remaining forest birds on Kauai are endemic to our island, only found here, not on any of the other islands? And here are the 6 that are endemic to Kauai: the Puayohi, Akekee, Anianiao, Akikiki, Kaua'i Elepayo, Kaua'i Amakihi. So 6 are endemic to Kauai, not found on any of the other islands. So these are our birds. 2 of them. So did you know that Iiwi and Apapane can also be found on other islands? It's actually easy to remember because so the 2 redbirds, right? Iiwi and Apapane, those are the ones that you can also find on other islands. They used to be found on all the islands. Now they like Iiwi, for example, hasn't been seen on Oahu since 2014. So they are disappearing too, but they used to be on all the islands. Did you know that 6 of the remaining forest birds on Kauai are Hawaiian honeycreepers? So and these are the 6: I'iwi, Akekee, Anianiao, Akikiki, Apapane, and Kauai Amakihi. And this is important to know when we talk about threats, because one of the biggest threats to our honeycreepers currently is avian malaria transmitted by mosquitoes, but it affects mostly the honeycreepers. The other bird species that are flycatchers or thrushes are not as susceptible. And then lastly, did you know that current conservation efforts on Kauai focus on 5 forest bird species? And here are the 5: I'iwi, Huaiohi, Akekee, Anianiao, and Akikiki. So these are 5 conversation starters you can use tonight if you have dinner or, whenever you remember, and just have a conversation about our beautiful birds. All right, so now let's jump into the individual species. So I'm going most abundant to least abundant. That's the order. And we are starting with the Apapane, which is a honeycreeper. Population is estimated at 50 to 80,000 on Kauai, which is still pretty good. So it's actually the easiest forest bird to see when you go up to Kokee, when you go hiking. They are really around. You can see them at the parking lot at the Napali Lookout. So really easy to see. They often travel in pairs, so they will fly over the canopy of the trees and kind of like fly from ohia tree to ohia tree because they are actually pollinators. So you see here one is pollinating or eating nectar from an ohia flower, and then the one on the right is sticking its beak into a native lobelia. I have another picture here that really illustrates how beautiful this bird is. Really like a dark red color, almost the same color as those ohia blossoms. And when you think about, I was talking about that there's 2 red bird species. So the other red bird is the i'iwi, right? And so the main difference is that the apapane has a black beak that's straight, whereas the i'iwi has like this longer curved beak that is more pink. And by the way, all of our forest bird species depend on native forest. They cannot they cannot survive on introduced species. They need ohia, they need koa, and they need the native understory. It's really, really important to realize that. So plant native. Next up is one of my favorite birds, which is the Kaua'i elepaio. And population is at about 50,000 on Kauai. And as you can see here, they are flycatchers. That's what they do. So they eat insects. The Kauai elepaio is endemic to Kauai, but there's also a Hawaii elepaio on the Big Island and an Oahu elepaio. There's no Maui elepaio. I've gotten this question before, and it's not really clear why, but the theory is that maybe another extinct honeycreeper occupied that niche over there, and so, there was just no Maui elepaio because of that. An interesting fact about these birds is that they are among the longest lived birds their size. We have caught a banded elepaio on Oahu that was, I believe, 23 years old, which is like really, really old for like a bird this size. And then another thing to note about them, I don't know if you can see this here, but see these whiskers? So Elepaio, they have like these little whiskers, and they're actually modified feathers that help them catching the insects, kind of like what dogs or cats have. So they use it to kind of notice movement, right? And then they can catch the insects. Another thing to know about the Elepaio is that they have a difference in color from juvenile or immature birds to adult birds. So the juveniles, they look kind of like reddish, rufous, really, really cute. like this, and then the adults, they have a little red spot still, but then they're mostly brown and gray. And this is like a typical, like this bird here with its tail like, like up in the air and its butt sticking out. This is a very typical position for the Kauai elepaio. You see that a lot. They're also super easy to see on the trail because they are, like I mentioned, insect eaters. So they will follow you because when you're hiking, you kind of start smelling a little bit, right? And that attracts flies or insects. And so then the Elepaio really like to follow the hikers because they are attracting insects. So really easy to see. It's mostly in the understory. The Apapana was mostly up in the canopy. The Elepaio you can mostly see in the understory. Okay, moving on. Trying to at least. Okay. Kauai amakihi, a beautiful, beautiful bird. Population on Kauai between 2 and 4,000. So we are already getting kind of like in the low numbers here. It's a honeycreeper endemic to Kauai. Um, until about the mid 90s, 95, there was only one Amakihi species, but then because of genetics and because people kind of looked at the species again, it was broken up into the Hawaii Amakihi, the Oahu Amakihi, and the Kauai Amakihi. And the most prominent difference is when you look at the different beaks, they have different sizes. The different Amakihi species have different sized beaks, and also the coloring is slightly different. They are mostly generalists. They're eating insects, fruit, and nectar. So really gorgeous birds found here.
Hey, Julia, real quick. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. I just want to do a check. I've got one attendee who's apparently not seeing your photos. So
Oh,
will others, I see them fine. Will others just respond in the chat whether you can see them or not? I see Heather says I can see. I see them. Sarah says, okay. I think it must just be all good. Okay. Thank you,
okay.
everybody. I think it must just be the one individual's um issue that must be happening tech on his end. So I
Mhm.
suggest if you cannot see the photos, maybe try logging out and then logging back in, and I'll let you back. I'll let you right back in. So I'm sorry, Julia, to
No worries, no
interrupt.
worries. I can share the slides too later. I mean, I'm happy to, we can talk
Yeah, that would
more.
be great too, but we
Yeah,
also have the video. So
yeah, that's right.
yeah. Okay, go right back to
Okay,
it.
yes. Okay, I was talking about the amakihi, Kauai amakihi, and I wanted to share a very interesting fact about this bird with you guys, and that is that we have found some resistance to avian malaria in the Hawaii amakihi. There has been studies done where they collected birds and then they looked at whether these birds had the infection with avian malaria, and they found that some of them had, and some of them, they were just not, they weren't getting as sick or dying as our other honeycreepers. We have not done a similar study yet on Kauai, but for the Hawaii amaki, it seems like that they have developed some resistance, which is great news. Okay, moving on to something super exciting that just happened this week, and this is about the Anianiao. Also a Kauai endemic bird, only found here on Kauai, and because of population decline in on Kauai, unfortunately, we had to start collecting eggs, and we collected some eggs in April. And then we have a collaboration with the zoo in Honolulu, and they have incubated them. And so the first picture you see on the left is kind of like we look at the embryo inside and see and make sure the embryo is still good. This is how the egg look without a light, and then it hatched. And then you have this little like well, it's cute because it's like so ugly that it's already cute, I think. And that's the first Anyanyao that hatched under human care. And then yesterday it fledged. So this is how it's looking now, and we are super excited to see that and to be able to learn about this species and learn about the biology of them. And then here is how this bird will hopefully look when it's all grown up, super bright and super yellow and like a little lemon drop in the forest. Interesting fact about these birds is that the anianiao is the smallest honey creeper in existence. When you put 4 pennies in your hand, this is how much they weigh. So they're super, super tiny. They're really tiny, like a really super tiny yellow lemon drop. Super cute. So fingers crossed that our little fledgling will stay healthy and thrive, and we will hopefully be able to return them to our beautiful forest because we don't really want them somewhere, in a cage. So we want them out in the forest. Okay, next up, and we are now getting into the realm of the threatened or endangered birds. So this is the puayohi, critically endangered. The population is at around 500 birds, and the number has been stable for quite a while now. They are a thrush. I mentioned before they had a larger brother, the large Kaua'i thrush, Kama'o, that's extinct. So these are also called the small Kaua'i thrush. They're not honey creepers, right? So they eat insects and also fruit. They're also fruit eaters and dispersers. And they mostly nest in cliff sides and which is great because it looks really cute. But the biggest problem that we have with these birds is predation by rats. So rats kind of climb up the cliff sides, and then they will eat the eggs or the hatchlings in the nest, and then also sometimes the bird sitting on the nest. So kind of like a big issue. When you look at the coloring, you can see that the juveniles, they have like these white speckles everywhere, whereas the adults, they are more uniform. And so when they grow up, they look like that. They are a super interesting bird to see in the field because they are very quiet and they will kind of come up to the tree that's like next to you and kind of sit there very still, not making any moves or any noises or any sounds. And then it's kind of like you almost, it's like you look around, you go, there's a bird. Like they are kind of like yeah, very interested in you, but they're not going to make any noises or anything like that. So super interesting bird. Next up, the iconic EEV, which is the one that most people know about because it's the coloring and the beak, and it's a very impressive, beautiful bird, crimson red. When you see it in the forest, like really, really spectacular. They also have a difference in plumage from juvenile to adult. So on the left, you can see this one is almost there, just some feathers here that still need to change colors. And then this is an adult, really, really red. The beak, really long and pink. The legs are pink. Really, really beautiful bird. The EEV on Kauai is down to about 150 or fewer birds. We have seen a steep decline in recent years on Kauai, and that's why this bird is now listed as threatened. On other islands, like when you go to the Big Island or to Maui, you still have very abundant numbers of EEV there, and it's easier to see. But here on Kauai, the numbers have plummeted down to 150 or maybe even lower. The main reason for that is, again, avian malaria. I mentioned it before. The EEV is the honey creeper that has the highest mortality rate when it comes to avian malaria. 90% of individuals die from avian malaria. So it's really a sad situation. When you look here, you see the EEV actually with a native lobelia and, kind of like sneaking the beak in and trying to get the nectar. So they are really important pollinators and highly adapted to the native flowers here on Kauai and also on the other islands. I think I already mentioned that the last confirmed sighting of an EEV on Oahu was in 2014. So it's officially not yet extinct on Oahu, but like I said, that's, now quite a while ago. So next up, another critically endangered bird, the akeke. We have a population of 100 birds or less on Kauai. The interesting feature about this bird is when you look at this beak here, the beak is kind of like crossed, right? And that's because the akeke, they use the beak to open the butts of the flower butts of, the native species and kind of like get inside there and eat the little insects and everything that are in there. So they use this beak to kind of like pry it open. Really interesting thing. So I have a photo here that was taken about 2 weeks ago in the forest of an akeke. You can see really, really well how it has this black mask around the eye. So that's one of the prominent features of the akeke, this black mask that you can see. And so then you can distinguish it easier from the amakihi or the anianiao, because if you see the black masks, it is very likely to be an akeke. We had some of them. We have a few years ago, we collected eggs of the akeke to make sure that we had some of them under human care. However, this bird species, and sometimes that happens, is not very happy under human care. They don't like being confined, and they were not doing well. And so we stopped collecting eggs and individuals, and we are just trying to protect them as best as we can up in the forest right now. All right, and this is going to be the most difficult part of my talk today. I'm going to talk about the akikiki, one of the uh, endemic species of Kauai, a beautiful little bird. It's also called the Kauai creeper because it kind of like hangs upside down and goes up and down the trunks of the trees, finding insects. And it's super fun to watch in the forest, like a really, really like a little clown almost, like hanging upside down and trying to get all the insects. It is critically endangered. I would say, I think we can safely say now that it is the rarest forest bird in the world. It's a honey creeper, so very susceptible to avian malaria. And I say that it's probably the rarest forest bird in the world because right now we know of one individual in the wild. And that individual is a female bird, Bandit. We have known her for a while. We have monitored some of her nests. We have collected some of her eggs. And this bird is named Pakele. And it has been really, really hard for us to kind of see the other Akikiki around her like vanishing, and she's still out there and still kicking. And so the last time we saw her, so we hadn't seen her since Christmas of 2024. We were kind of thinking, actually we were talking about it already, that we need to kind of, share something like she's probably no longer around and probably, died, maybe hopefully of old age and not of avian malaria. But then our field crew was in her territory the other day and saw her. That was April 24th of 2025. So 2 weeks ago, Pakele was still out there. And we know it's Pakele because we saw her color bands, and our field crew was actually also able to take a picture of her color bands here on the right-hand side. Her banding colors are aluminum, orange, orange, orange. And that color combination gave her the nickname Bucket, because it looks like a Home Depot bucket. So for years, her name was Bucket. But then when we started to see all the akikiki, like dying, vanishing, we wanted to find out if we could, give her like a Hawaiian name. And so we asked our Kumu Keahi what she would think would be a good name. And she wrote an email and said, oh, a good name would be the Hawaiian name for bucket. But the Hawaiian name for bucket is Pakeke, but in her email, there's a typo, and so she sent us Pakele instead of Pakeke. And so we were like, okay, Pakele, because none of us we don't speak Olelo Hawaii. So we were like, okay, sounds good, Pakele. So now then she was Pakele, and then later we found out that Pakele actually means to escape. And we thought that was just the perfect thing because she is the bird that is escaping extinction, and she has been now for years, and she has been like this little beacon of hope for our crew, for everyone who has been following us. Just she's still out there, and as long as she's still out there, how can we give up, right? We can't give up. And so, just when you're here on Kauai, just like think about her, that, she's up there. It's the most beautiful thing to know that she's up there, but it's also the most heartbreaking thing that to know that she's there by herself. And, there may be, a couple of other Akikiki individuals around that we don't know, right? We are not in every corner of the forest. So, it is possible that, there's a couple more somewhere, but we have been in Akikiki territory now for the last, I don't know, like maybe 2 months our crews have been there and they have not seen any other Akikiki. So yeah, beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. So with that, I'm just gonna give you a brief overview of, why all these birds are disappearing and what's happening here. I have mentioned many of these things already during my talk. Obviously, habitat loss, right? We need native forest. These birds need the native forest to survive. If they don't have native forest, they can't thrive. There's a lot of invasive plants that were brought in here as ornamentals. They just outgrow the native plants, take over the forest, and yeah, destroy the native plants. There's lots of introduced mammals. There are pigs, predators like rats and cats that do a number on these birds. Like, remember, all of our birds evolved in the absence of predators, so they don't really have strategies to evade cats or rats or other predators. Like they don't know how to do that. There's obviously stochastic events like hurricanes and wildfires that do a number on our ecosystem. And then we also have introduced diseases, rapid ohia death, right, threatening our ohia trees, and then also avian pox. And then the biggest bad guy on the block is for our forest birds, at least, is mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have a disease called avian malaria, which is not dangerous to humans. But if one of these birds, one of these mosquitoes that have avian malaria, the female mosquitoes bite one of our forest birds, they transmit the disease. And our forest birds the honey creepers have no resistance against avian malaria. And yeah, like I said, species like the EEV, they have a 90% mortality rate. So one bite is enough of a infected mosquito, and then these species will die. So with that, I come to my last slide, and this is where you come in. So we often get the question, what can we do? Like, how can we help? And there's a few things you can do. One is what you are doing right now. You are here and you are learning about the birds and learning about what's happening. So you can follow us on social media. There's lots of videos that we have out there, information where you can learn, see the birds, on your screen. and learn about them. So that's one thing you can do. You can volunteer with us. Especially, I'm going to put in a plug for my bird art exhibit, which is going to be happening again this year in November, November 7 to November 14 at the KSA Gallery at Kukui Grove. And you can, if you're an artist or photographer, you can submit artwork to me, and you can donate to proceeds to the project if you sell it. Or you can, if you're on island and you want to help, volunteer for this exhibit and help us set up and take down and staff the gallery and so forth. And if you want to do that, please just send me an email at julia@kawaiiforestbirds.org. Donate, right? Of course, we're always looking for sources of money. So if you can, then donations always help with the work we do. And also, very, very important, support the conservation actions that we are trying to put out there. Tell your politicians that you want to see these birds in the forest. You don't want them to go extinct. You want to support these actions that are done here to protect the birds and the forest, to make sure the birds can survive. Climate change, a big thing, right? We used to have no mosquitoes up at our field sites. Now, because of the rising temperatures, the mosquitoes are up there, and that's why species like the akikiki and akekee are declining right now in the EEV, because now we have the mosquitoes in that last habitat that was mosquito-free because of rising temperatures. Share what you heard today with the rest of Hawaii and the mainland, wherever you are. Just, build the aloha and build the knowledge that these species are still here, and they are absolutely remarkable, and they deserve to be protected. And yeah, just go out there and let everybody know that you love these forest birds and don't want them to go extinct. And I'm going to end with another quote, which is from my kids' books that I read to them. I always read the Lorax, Dr. Seuss, to them. And there's this very, very famous quote that says, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." And with that, here is our team, or some of our team, Resist Extinction. So this is some of our crew um, that works on mosquito control, egg collections, and so forth. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to all for being here, and I take any questions you would like to ask. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Everybody, if you would use your reaction buttons to share your gratitude, your love with Julia. And I see a couple questions that have come in the chat. If you have other additional questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Um, I'm going to start with a question from Julie to Julia. And for this section, if you would maybe stop sharing screen, Julia, so we can all see each other.
Go.
And yeah, the rest of you, if you as well want to go on video so we can see you, that would be great too. So Julie's question is, since thrushes aren't as susceptible to avian malaria, why did and I'm going to insert large Hawaiian thrush become extinct? I know that you addressed at the very end of your presentation, this question came in beforehand, but I know that there are a multitude of threats that you shared. But is there a specific one that might be associated? That's the kama'o, right?
That's the kama'o. I think that is probably because of rat predation, because I think they had a similar nesting habit as the puayohi, but I'm not 100% sure. But the main reason why we had so many extinctions in recent years is habitat loss, right? Like I said, these birds cannot survive on introduced species. I don't actually know what the kama'o, like what they were eating. I don't know if if they were insect eaters or pollinators or what they were. I don't know. But I know that these species rely so much on the native forest that, if the native forest disappears and the plants that they were relying on disappear, that the species will just go extinct.
Right, right. Um, Also, to jumping then toward the end of your presentation about Pakele, Julie has asked, has DNA been taken from her, or former birds of her species to possibly be used in an experiment to create her species again. Will you ask that and then maybe share? Because I know there's been some other things you've done, maybe not exactly like that.
Yeah, we don't have collected DNA from her specifically, but we do have collected two of her nests. So we have her offspring under human care. We are working with the San Diego Zoo Global. They have an aviary on Maui and also on the Big Island, and they have a flock. I think it's about 45-ish birds right now, akikiki, under human care, and some of these are her offspring. So we don't have her DNA, and we are not gonna. People ask me why don't you leave her out there alone by herself, right? But it's like to me, I could not take her from there right now. I mean, she's not a young bird, and I think, we should let her be there and just, yeah, I think it would not be good to take out of the forest. But we do have her offspring under human care. So
Yeah,
her DNA will continue to live.
and I would just add that I don't think that the science is there yet to take a bird and get DNA from it and then try to. We're just not there, right? So that there's a yeah. So
People have asked me about the dire wolf, right? Because that was in the
right,
news. But the problem there is it's not really it, like they did not create a dire wolf. What they
no,
did is they took DNA from a wolf and then manipulated the DNA from the wolf so that it would display characteristics of a dire wolf, like bigger and the fur and whatnot. But they didn't really clone or, it's not Jurassic Park.
yeah, yeah. Okay, Bobby asks, does it help if we plant native plants and trees like ohia, koa, and mamane as examples?
Absolutely. Yes, plant native. Yes, everywhere you go, plant native.
And I second that, as you know, Julia, we talk about that a lot. Katie asks, can you discuss the IIT and how it is going so far?
Yes, so IIT means incompatible insect technique. That's one of the methods we are using to control mosquitoes here on Kauai, and it's going pretty well. We started in February, and I'm going to put a plug in for a talk that we will be doing up in Princeville on June 20. It is by the Friends of Kilauea Wildlife. Is that correct? No, Friends of Kauai Wildlife, I think it's the correct name. And it's the Mo'olelo series that Thomas Daubert puts on, and we have our field crew there on June 20, and they will share exactly how it's going and what's happening with the mosquito control.
And
But
that's
yeah, it's going well.
and that's Friends of Kauai National Wildlife Refuge
Yes, thank you.
Complex.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
A complex phrase, but there you go. Which forest birds have populations in captivity?
Currently, we have Akikiki and Anianiao. We have some Akekee still in captivity, but they're not very happy in captivity. And that's it for our birds here on Kauai. So Anianiao, Akikiki, and Akekee.
And by the way, Julia, I'm scrolling through to get questions, but I have to scroll because everybody's going, this was great. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Beautiful presentation, blah, blah, blah. So I'm skipping over all of the accolades, but no, they are there in the
Thank you, thank you,
chat.
thank you.
Palmer has a question.
Yeah.
Are there any encouraging examples of our endemic birds following habitat restored at lower elevations, as in urban forests?
Like if there's like success stories, conservation success stories, is that the question?
Uh, That would be a way to interpret that, yes. But I'm what I'm reading into it, and I can think of an example, is our any of our, say, native forest birds moving
Oh,
downward
moving down.
in elevation into urban or community or neighborhood forests or
Gotcha,
neighborhood.
gotcha. So here on Kauai, not yet. because we do have a lot of suitable habitat right now that's vacated, and the birds have vanished because of the mosquitoes. But when you go over to Oahu, like I have reports from people that live in Manoa Valley and other places that have native forest where the amakihi is coming down, the Oahu amakihi. So yes, so that can happen. And here on Kauai, as soon as we get those pesky mosquitoes out of the landscape, um, fingers crossed, there is a chance that we will see these birds returning to the habitat. And then if you have a yard that's full of native plants, they might come to your house.
That's what I like to say and think, right? Is that,
Right.
plant natives, and when you're planting natives in your yard, think like a forest. Plant a canopy tree, plant some understory plants, and plant some ground cover. So you've got a little mini kipuka forest. Um, because I'm a glass is half full kind of person, and I'm just hopeful that someday we potentially may have some of our forest birds back at lower elevations. And just to add to your comment, Julie, about the Oahu Amakihi, I've heard the same thing about the Hawaii Amakihi on Big Island. That
Yeah,
that as well
very nice.
has made its way down into lower elevations where there are mosquitoes. And what I have been told is that it's a population numbers thing,
Mm.
right? If the population numbers were big enough and large enough to sustain the loss of these individuals while giving them time to, show some resistance to avian malaria, that was key.
Yeah,
So
and it looks like the amakihi is displaying some resistance against the disease, which
hopefully that might happen here, yeah, plant natives. Let's see. Yojana asks, if they're under human care, at what point are the birds reintroduced into the wild?
well, that's a good question. That's going to take years because we need to make sure that it's safe for them to return here, right? And hopefully with this mosquito control, hopefully we will be able to continue that and make sure it is safe for them. But that's going to be years, and there will be a lot of data that has to be collected to actually make sure and prove that it's safe for the birds to return.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, though. Katie asks, that's great to hear about the June 20th talk with your field crew. She lives in Pennsylvania. She'd love to see it. Will it be recorded? And Louise responded, thank you, Louise. Yes, it's recorded. It is also live streamed via Zoom. And Louise included a link. So for those of you who are interested in that talk, but maybe you can't make it to Princeville, you live off island, you live on the other side of the island, check the chat because there's a link to where you can sign up and watch it real time. And if you happen to miss it real time, it is recorded and it is shared via their website later. So lots of ways to get that information if you're not able to get it in person. Oh, Heather asked a question in the Q&A. I'm impressed by these Hawaiian names and wish my local birds were called by their indigenous names. And Heather, did white biologists rename these in the 1900s and they've been changed back or they were never changed?
Hmm.
Do you know that answer, Julia? And
That's
or
a good question. I don't really know the answer. But I mean, I know that some of them have like, English names, like the Akikiki is called the Kaua'i creeper. The Puayohi is called the small Kaua'i thrush. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a question for Sabra if she's still on.
yeah, or anybody else, who
Yeah,
is conversant in the
yeah,
Hawaiian language. I mean, I know, for example, there's lots of species here in Hawaii that we refer to their common name is their Hawaiian name, right? And
right.
many of
Yeah.
us don't even know or have never referred to them by some English term.
You also need to know that in the Hawaiian language, I mean, Olelo Hawaii was not a written language, right? So there was nothing really recorded about the names and stuff like that, like written, right?
Mm.
Until like, maybe the Europeans came, or I don't know when exactly was stuff written down, but before that it was all, like in Olelo in stories passed, from generation to generation.
Yeah, and I'm jumping ahead on the chat, but Bobby had shared that the Maui Parrot Bill was renamed to Kiwi Q, and my understanding on that one is that the Maui parrot bill, which obviously is found on Maui, it's if it had a Hawaiian name, it was lost. Like
Yeah.
nobody knew it. And
Mhm.
so yes, it was given a Hawaiian name. So that's a little bit different though than some of these other ones that their Hawaiian name retained. Um, Stephen adds, but some have been created in consultation with Hawaiian speakers because, yeah, exactly what I was just
Yeah.
saying. Perfect. Yes. Okay. Let me scroll back up. I see that there was a question from Bobby. Do you feel that you will have the funding that you need to continue this very important work and research? And I know that's a hot button question. I know that all of us are probably thinking it. I also know that you are probably limited in how you can answer that question, but I want to give you an opportunity to reply.
Yes. So right now, we have funding to do what we are doing. We have a lot of state funding that we are using. What the future will look like, I don't know. Because we need a lot of funding to keep this going, and what will happen in the future, yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Um, scrolling. So again, the link for that talk on the 20th in Princeville is in the chat. Um, and I think that wraps it up. We're at 4:04 our time here. We only went a few minutes over. Wait a minute, let me just double check. There's something in the Q&A. I think, oh, that was the one we answered. Okay, great. Um, for those of you who are interested in keeping informed on some of these future events that I classify as Forest Talk, the best way to be aware of when those are coming out, and I don't have my next one set, but I have a couple in mind for June. I'm going to put my newsletter link in the chat, and this is the best way to stay up to speed on what the next talks are going to be, what the next Forest Journaling event is going to be. All of those events are publicized in our newsletter that we send out monthly. And Julia, is there any links or information you want to include in the chat to share?
Yeah, I can quickly write down our website, kawaiiforestbirds.org. That basically has all the information you need about the different bird species, more photos, also a link to our YouTube channel. You know, we have two great documentaries. One is called Vanishing Voices. It's half an hour long, kind of explains the incompatible insect technique and the mosquito control. And the other one is called When Silence Becomes the Song, which is an hour-long documentary that is about our work that we do here, the Kaua'i Forest Bird Recovery Project. So that's on our YouTube channel, and you can find all that information on our website, kawaiiforestbirds.org.